They had put the countdown on hold at the 31-second mark, and now they're back to counting it down to launch. Let's listen to ABC's coverage here on KTSA. And we have just brought you the live launch of the final space shuttle mission. There was a little bit of a glitch before the final launch at the 31-second mark. They had to stop and review a safety system. They determined it was in working order. They resumed the launch. This is the final flight for America's fleet of space shuttles. And we will bring you more on this story coming up at 10:40. Right now it's 10:30 on San Antonio's News Talk 550 KTSA.
At this point, the capsule rolls.
And I know you've been here many times, and you know your way around a microphone. All right, before we leave America's sweetheart here and move on to some other topics, you know, Casey Anthony told an interviewer that, or not an interviewer, but a fellow inmate, she'd like to have more children, and she'd like to adopt. I don't know much about adoption, but Yami, I don't think she's a candidate, right? I mean, how far does that application go?
Yeah. Self-destroy right there.
One theory about this case is that was going on all along is that we don't really have a template for this. And what I mean by it is, if you bring me a mass murderer who spree kills 10 people in his office, I've heard of this before. If you bring me a serial killer like Ted Bundy, who over a period of many years stalks and kills his victims, I've heard of this before. We even have, sadly, a template for the crazy mother who kills her entire family because God told her to or whatever. People were saying, you know, this jury might have a problem here because how do you make sense of, if you believe the state, how do you make sense of what she did? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to find a babysitter than to do all this? And so did that play into this? Did this jury have a problem because they couldn't wrap their mind around the idea that they were being asked to believe in, that she cold-bloodedly killed or somehow accidentally killed her own child and then covered it up?
I don't think so. She's a pretty unsympathetic figure. I mean, even...
Oh, she's one of us, Jonathan.
No,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't think anyone buys that. And even the jurors, like I said, the few comments that I've read from the couple of jurors who have agreed to speak to the press, they said, you know, they felt terrible anguish over this. That they don't seem to have any doubt that she actually, well, obviously they have some doubt that she killed her child, but they didn't believe that the state achieved the burden of proof. So I don't think that's the issue. I mean, she's a thoroughly unsympathetic figure. I would tell you, you know, I'm not advocating this. I don't think it's a good thing, but she needs to be careful in public because there are people. There are people who will try to take justice into their own hands.
Well, she says she's going to change her name and move to another community. So
she better. I mean, I think that was one of the things that has come out of the coverage that I've seen is that she's in for some really difficult couple of years. I mean, I would fully expect that there would be you know, somebody looking to take a shot at her life. You know, especially with the type of assassinations that we have and other things, there was enough coverage on this and enough anger that she better have some sort of guard, or I think she'll be in trouble.
A lot of people were really upset calling in that day and the next day, Yami. They were really upset because they believe she's going to make a lot of money. There's going to be a book. She's actually writing the book right now. But there's going to be a book, there's going to be some big offers to do magazine interviews and exclusives. My theory is, I think there's going to be a lot of money very quickly, and then nothing. Exactly. I mean, this is going to fall off a cliff, and judging by her behavior up to this point, I have the feeling she's going to be living in a life, in a hell of her own making, because she's going to run right through that money and have nothing.
She's going to run through the money. She's going to be out partying. I mean, look at her age, you know. Here I am now. I have no cares. I can go out and spend the money. I can have a good time. But also, it comes back to, it's our choice whether we buy the book, whether I buy that, you know, Inquirer, whether I buy into Casey Anthony. So if you didn't like her and you don't like the decision, then don't buy the stuff. period.
You probably better make it a pop-up book or a coloring book, because I have the feeling that people that are really interested in her story are not big-time readers, you know.
Well, also, I suspect that, as with OJ, this is not over. The civil suits will follow, maybe from the grandparents. I mean, the grandparents have ample reason to bring a suit against their Casey. These groups, the search groups that went out on that went out on a wild goose chase to try to find the body. There are a lot of individuals who might bring civil suits. She may be in courtrooms for a long time.
So don't be worrying that she's having a great time or she's living it up. I mean, she may have gotten away with something, but she's not getting away with all of it.
True, but Jack, let me ask you this. What responsibility do you think the media has in all this in terms of playing it up? I mean, I'll give you an example. Aside from just the TV coverage that was on all day, and you talk about kind of the lame folks who just sit around and watch this all day, but so the number of hours. I just got on mysanantonio.com last night, and they had a line item called The Many Faces of Casey Anthony. It had 137 pictures of her, all from in the courtroom. And there's just an obsession with this sort of stuff that I wonder how much of it is fed in the media.
I would be inclined to say that, except that the day after we looked at the ratings for HLN and Nancy Grace, and they were all-time record breakers.
Isn't that amazing?
So they're giving the people what they want.
Yeah,
it's easy to blame the messenger, but they're just giving people what they want. And Yami, I mean, there's a big difference between saying, well, we really should be doing stories about raising the debt ceiling or the gold standard, but this is what people will watch.
It's part of real life. I think in a way people see it, and it's a mother and it's a child and the grandparents and the dynamics of a family relationship, and it's kind of like a novel. I mean, a lot of people just pick it up and start reading. It's the same with Elizabeth Johnson. I mean, we've been on baby Gabriel for how long? You know, you got the good-looking dad that has some problems, you got the beautiful mom that, you know, allegedly is crazy, and you have the beautiful baby that's missing. And people just get into it. It's like a sponge. They soak it up and they love it.
And for a lot of people, like you said, it crosses the line between news and entertainment.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, do you sit around in an editorial meeting or a newsroom weighing whether or not, or do you say, hey, our job is is circulation, our job is viewers, our job is listeners, we know what we have to do?
Well, I can't speak for the newsroom, but I can tell you for the editorial board, the Casey Anthony case has not come up one time.
Well, I mean, because you're not going to write an editorial about it. But,
right.
But, I mean, you understand the news business. You work in the news business. You understand that you're not going to sit there and contemplate whether you should be edifying the conversation or whether you need to be a part of the conversation.
It's news. I mean, like you said, that people want it. And if I would bet that when I see the report for My San Antonio today, we'll probably see that the profile of Casey Anthony may have been our top item on my essay yesterday.
Probably had a lot of hits, didn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the answer, it's a good question, Chip, and I think the answer is unless you believe as a journalist that it's your job to teach people or edify people, you try to figure out what's going on and fit into that.
And here's another thing, and I'm not going to name any stations. This happened. We had 2 stations in town do a story comparing it to the missing baby in New Braunfels and missing baby Gabriel. It's like, why are we doing this? These children have not been found murdered.
Right.
They have not been found.
Right.
So it's the thirst of, let's feed into this. You know, people want it. Let's give it to them. Maybe our ratings will do better. I have an issue with that.
And I will say that I think that there is a big difference between this case and the national interest in it and, say, the Michael Jackson trial. The molestation trial. Where that was a circus atmosphere, and I talked a minute ago about crossing the line between entertainment and news. I mean, that was entertainment.
Well, how does it compare to the OJ trial, which is a comparison a lot of people made? I don't think it does, in the sense that we already felt like we knew him. The wow factor in that story was that this was a guy people really liked, and he was very familiar to us, and this was totally out of our expectations for him, whereas we never heard of Casey Anthony before. You know,
Right.
there was no known factor there. There were no celebrities in this story.
Well, OJ had so much too, you know. He was such a wealthy person and with so much publicity and on TV all the time. And then you add the race aspect of things, and that was certainly fueling a lot of the interest. This one just seems like this could be your next door neighbor, you know, and that's why it's so, it could be anybody in small town America, in a big city, and you didn't expect it to happen, and then to have such a heartless mentality for somebody who is supposed to be a mother. You know, it's supposed to be natural to go so long without even talking to anybody or telling anybody. It just seems impossible to believe.
I guess I kind of have a problem too with the fact that nobody seems to be interested in, if she didn't do it, nobody seems to be interested in this victim. I mean,
Exactly.
To me, this should have been the Kaylee Anthony case. And if you believe that she did not cause the death of her child, isn't it really vitally important to know who did? And there's just no. She should be on fire with saying, "I want to find." Even OJ said, "I want to find the real killer." I don't know if he meant it or not, but at least he said it. I mean, nobody seems, Yami, to want to solve this. Where's the justice for this little girl?
There isn't any justice for this little girl, and here's the other issue. Now, what does law enforcement have to do? I mean, they believe she killed her.
Yeah.
So who are they going to get now? You know, do we go after her parents who may have known something about this and helped her to hide it? Do we go after her brother? I mean, you want to have somebody to say, this isn't right, this child should be alive, I want to hold somebody
I don't think
accountable.
anybody will. I think that the police and the prosecutors have been so scorched by this experience that they don't want anything to do with it. And sadly, that means that unless private investigators take this on, nobody will investigate this. And that's real. I mean, I know that you don't prosecute a murder for the victim. You prosecute for the state. You prosecute for the public. But still, I guess I would like to think that somewhere in prosecution there's something we're doing for the victim, or we're closing the loop. And I just cannot believe in all the celebrating and all the comments from this family. Nobody is saying we must find out what happened.
Well, maybe they should donate some of that money that they're going to make
Yeah.
and make a foundation for Kaylan, helping other people find their children.
Don't hold your
I
breath.
know,
We're
I
back
know.
with Gang of Four. It's 10:44 into the newsroom for Karen Klaus.
Shuttle Atlantis.
Today on the gang today, Yami Virgin from Fox San Antonio, former city councilman Chip Haass, and San Antonio Express News columnist Jonathan Gurwitz. Well, maybe Casey Anthony got away with it, but Humberto Leal did not. He was executed in Huntsville last night, and in his final words, apologized to the victim's family, his 16-year-old victim back in 1994, and ended with Viva Mexico. This case, of course, international attention because of the violation of the Vienna Convention, where he was not informed of his right to contact his consulate, even though he had lived almost his entire life in the United States. He was a Mexican national. To me, though, this is not the same as a person being denied the right. It isn't as if he asked and was told he couldn't. And so when people say, oh, now Americans will not be afforded this right abroad, I'm not sure I make that connection, Jonathan.
Well, it's a technicality, but the issue is, frankly, I was surprised that the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, because they already decided this issue in 2008. Right. And what the court said is, and you know, there's a lot of emotional, and there are a lot of emotional issues attached to this case, because it has to do with states' rights and the federal government and the jurisdiction of an international court. But you peel all that away, and it comes down to a simple issue of, do you want, as an American, if you go across the border to Nuevo Laredo, which nobody does anymore, but if you go across the border and you have a prescription drug in your pocket and you get pulled over and you're thrown in jail for carrying a controlled substance, do you want to be able to call the American consulate to let them know what's going on and come help you? And that's what the Vienna Convention says. And what the court said in 2008 in the Medellin case was, we can't decide this. The Senate ratified the treaty. but Congress didn't pass a law to bring U.S. courts into compliance.